Good evening. I am Calibe Thompson, and welcome to Island Origins Live on Jamaicans.com. This evening, I'm speaking with author Edwidge Danticat, an award winning Haitian writer whose recent work, Create Dangerously The Immigrant Artist at Work, is being reimagined as a theatrical production by my second guest, Lilena Blain-Cruz. I'm going to introduce Edwidge to you first. So, author Edwidge Danticat was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. As a young girl, she moved to Brooklyn, New York, where she earned degrees in French literature and creative writing. In 1983, at age 14, Danticat published her first writing in English in a citywide New York magazine. By 1994, she had written her first novel, Breath, Eyes, Memory. In 1997, she was named one of the country's best young authors by the literary journal Granta. And tonight we will speak to her about one of her more recent publications, Create Dangerously The Immigrant Artist at Work. She has also been a teacher and a filmmaker. She has received critical acclaim and won numerous awards. I won't tell you about all of them, but I am going to tell you she has an honorary doctorate degree from Brooklyn College, Brown University, Yale University, Smith College, Adelphi University, St. Thomas University, the University of Indianapolis, and the University of the West Indies Open Campus. Miss Dantica, that's a lot of DRs beside your name. How are you?
Um, Thank you. Not real DRs, honoraries. But
Great.
actually, I have great memories of all of them. But I have the most striking memory of the University of West Indies Open Campus. That was extra special in Grenada.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. We have one of those in Jamaica as well. So,
Mhm.
and we are again on Jamaicans.com this evening. So, shout out to all the Jamaicans who are watching. Please do go
Hello.
ahead and put your questions in the comments for Miss Edwidge Dantica. So, Edwidge, I'm going to start with you, and hopefully Liliana will join us in not too long from now. So, can you share a synopsis for me of the book that you have written called Create Dangerously?
Okay, so before that, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you, Karim, for having me on the show. I consider myself somewhat honorary Jamaican because I have a half Jamaican niece. I love the folks at Calabash who actually brought me to Jamaica on my second trip there was for
Wow.
Calabash. So hello to everybody. So Create Dangerously has a very beautiful history for me. So in 2005, like 15 years ago now, no, not 2005, but 15 years ago, in 2008, I was asked to give the second annual Toni Morrison Lecture at Princeton in the presence of Toni Morrison. And she was an idol of mine, and I was so intimidated by the ask, but extremely honored. And so I decided, what can I talk about in the presence of Toni Morrison that will make sense, that is only like mine, sort of what I can offer. And then I started thinking about the creators of Haiti, writers, artists, people who, starting with the dictatorship, had to be very innovative about the way they were creating their art, because often our creators, Jacques-Stéphane Alexis, who's one of the canonical writers of Haiti, disappeared after returning from a trip abroad. This year we celebrate his centennial. Other writers, it was considered dangerous to speak against a dictatorship and to create your art against a dictatorship. So I wanted to then, with the lecture and with the book, honor them. So it's a book about artists who are creating at very difficult times, starting some during the dictatorship, some later on, artists, photographers, some journalists. So that's what it is. It's their stories, as told to the filter of being an immigrant writer, someone who inherited that legacy and wants to closely examine it, wants to closely listen to it and share it with others.
Right. Okay. Um, you raised a good point a while ago. This is a Jamaican audience, so everybody may not be familiar with who you are, although one of our guests just declared immediately that you are the gold standard.
That's so kind.
If you want to just share a little bit about yourself, I gave a synopsis of your bio, but what is it that I'm sure many people think that Edwidge Danticat is a magical name. So what is it that has been magical about your life so far?
Well, a lot of people think it's it's a name like Jamaica Kincaid, that it's a chosen name, but it's my birth name. I was born with it. I was born in Haiti in 1969 during the Duvalier dictatorship. My parents left Haiti, my dad when I was 2, and my mom when I was 4. And like a lot of Caribbean young people, I grew up with my aunt and uncle. And 8 years after they left, my parents were able to send for me because they were undocumented, and they could only send, they could only send for you once they have their papers, in order. And that was the case for my parents. When I was 12, I moved to Brooklyn, New York, East Flatbush, if anybody from Brooklyn is watching and they know what I mean. And so I went to, the junior high school, the last year of junior high school, and then high school and Flatbush. And just as you said, started writing for a newspaper for young people called New Youth Connections. It still exists. It's called Youth Communications now. And that's really how I started writing. And I wrote an essay for them about my first day in the United States, in which I was like obsessed with the escalator at the airport because it seems like a magic carpet to me. So I wrote about that. And then when I was done, I thought, I think I have more to say, And then I started working on what became Breath Ice Memory, which was my first novel, which was published in 1994 when I was 25. And it's hard to believe that book is going to soon be 30 years old. And it was chosen by Oprah for her book club. It was selection 18. I know that because she just did the 100th selection, and that kept popping up. And then I just have been writing ever since. I've taught at the university, including University of Miami, at New York University. And, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I have 2 daughters, and that's about it.
All right. So you've had a very colorful life. I did not actually get into the Oprah Book Club and some of the awards that you've received, but your work has been very well received by the mainstream over the years. So you borrowed the title, and you say that you borrowed the title "Create Dangerously" from another author's work. What does that title "Create Dangerously" actually mean?
So when I was, thinking of doing the lecture, I just happened to be reading a lot of the French Algerian author Albert Camus. He wrote L'étranger, The Stranger, which is a book that I think so many people you can't go through school without having that be placed in front of you at some point. But he also wrote a lot of essays. He wrote a lot of really beautiful essays about Algeria, where his family was, his mother was still living when he was writing, and which there was one of the essays was called L'artiste et son temps, the artist in its time. It was translated as Create Dangerously, and recently it was put out as a small book. So when I was reading that, about writers, their responsibilities, and I kept thinking how much, the writers of Haiti during the dictatorship embodied that. They sort of lived it. I tell the story of Félix Maurice Leroy, who when I moved to Miami in 2002 was still alive and walking around, with a big puffy head of hair, was a poet from Haiti who, during the dictatorship, staged Antigone, as a kind of protest, but, with double meaning, so that, he wouldn't be killed for staging the play. So, Camus, I borrowed that. I thought, this is what these artists were doing, what he's talking about here of, he, in that essay, he says things like, the artist has to, everybody, we're all in the amphitheater. And what is truer now than with social media? We're always in an amphitheater, right? And the artist more so. And he just talked a lot about the responsibility of artists, which I thought all these Haitian artists and Haitian creators that I talk about in the book embodied.
I think, okay, there we go. I'm actually going to, thank you for sharing that. I'm actually going to pull in Lilena, who just joined us. And for those of you watching online, Lilena Blain-Cruz, am I saying your name correctly? Okay. So Lilena is part of the conversation this evening because Edwidge and Lilena are together putting on the play, the theatrical version of Create Dangerously. And so they're collaborating on this project together. I am actually going to take a moment and just introduce Lilena to you. So Lilena is, let me find her. Okay, the world premiere of, Lilena, the world premiere of their collaborative effort, a theatrical production directed by Blain-Cruz and based on Danticat's novel, Create Dangerously, will take place at the Colony Theatre on May 6th and run through May 28th. The Colony Theatre is on Lincoln Road, and this is being produced courtesy of Miami New Drama. So, hang on one moment. All right, so Lilena, I do not have your bio here, but I'm just going to bring you on anyway and ask you to just introduce yourself. Technical
Lilena, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody.
Let me go from memory. Lilena is a Tony Award nominee. She is an award-winning director, and she has adapted the work of Edwidge Danticat from Create Dangerously to create this theatrical production that's going to world premiere here with us in Miami. So that's my version, Lilena. Let me give you yours.
Hello? I can hear you. Oh, no, I feel like I'm having difficulties. Somebody warned me today. They were like, Taurus, I'm a Taurus. And it's Mercury retrograde, which means all of my technology is supposed to be terrible.
It's not just yours. I think it's everything today.
It's raining somewhere, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, but you look fabulous. So please do tell us about in your own words.
Yeah, I'm a director mainly. I went to the Yale School of Drama where I got my MFA, and since then I've been working on a variety of projects, new plays and operas. The Tony nomination was for The Skin of Our Teeth, which was a big production that I did at Lincoln Center. I've worked on shows like with Wayne Shorter and Esperanza Spalding on their work, and artists like Susan Laurie Parks and Lynn Nottage. And so, Edwidge Danticat's books were a huge, huge inspiration for me, and it's a real honor to have a chance to make this into a theatrical event. And that's where I am here at Miami New Drama, trying stuff out, experimenting, making new work. Come check it out.
I see
you fit perfectly into the drama world.
Yes,
I can see too that she's had that cafecito across the street.
It is true.
So Liliana, your background is Puerto Rican and Haitian.
That's right.
All right. And how did you guys meet?
Oh, wow. I think we met through Michelle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm thinking, did we meet before this?
I don't think so. I think we met
Oh yeah, we met
specifically.
through Michelle, and then
Yep.
before the pandemic, we had cafecitos in
Yep,
front
we
of
did.
the theater. Yes, okay.
And I was
Yes.
so nervous. I was so nervous. I was literally sitting there like, hello, I am a huge fan.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
There was no need, no need.
let's go there. How did you hear about Edwidge Danticat, and how did you decide that you wanted to turn this book into a play?
So I had read like the short stories Crick Crack, and then I had read Breath, Eyes, Memory, and I'm my mom's side is from Haiti. My grandparents immigrated here in the 60s, and I have a close connection to that family, but I feel like I didn't always have a connection into the history of why they might have really came. It was talked about privately and sometimes in small segments and pieces, but I felt like this deep connection to an island I had never actually had a chance to go to, right? And a history that I wanted to have a little bit more connection to. And so I was a big reader. I was an English major. I loved books. I loved novels. That was my way of understanding people and places. And so in reading these books, I felt like, I had access to a community that felt both close and distant, And so when thinking about what it meant to make a work specifically for Miami, I was thinking about like how much Edwidge's work meant to me as somebody to connect to that part of my my family history. And so and then during it was a few years ago, particularly during Trump's presidency, when I was reading Create Dangerously, right? And there had been a moment in time where I was really scared for all of us in the United States of America, and some of the things that he was saying really, really made me angry, and so reading the book and seeing how people spoke out despite being afraid, how they through their creativity continued to speak for others who didn't have a chance to speak was very inspiring. And so again, as we live in these crazy times, I felt like this was a really beautiful book to remind us of the power of art. Yeah.
I want to read for those watching, and just a reminder, you are watching Island Origins live on Jamaicans.com. We're talking to Edwidge Danticat and Lilena Blain-Cruz about their new play production that's coming up, Create Dangerously. It's an adaptation of the book. I want to read the synopsis that Goodreads shared on their website. So they say, in this deeply personal book, the celebrated Haitian American writer Edwidge Danticat reflects on art and exile, examining what it means to be an immigrant artist from a country in crisis. Inspired by Albert Camus' lecture, Create Dangerously, and combining memoir and essay, Danticat tells the story of artists, including herself, who create despite or because of the horrors that drive them from their homelands and continue to haunt them. Danticat eulogizes an aunt who guarded her family's homestead in the Haitian countryside, a cousin who died of AIDS while living in Miami as an undocumented alien, and a renowned Haitian radio journalist whose political assassination shocked the world. She writes about the Haitian novelist she first read as a girl at the Brooklyn Public Library, a woman mutilated in a machete attack who became a public witness against torture, and the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat and other artists of Haitian descent. She also suggests that the aftermath of natural disasters in Haiti and the United States reveal that the countries are not as different as many Americans like to believe. Edwidge, you deal with some very hard topics in the book, as mentioned just now. And you talked about having other Haitians come up to you and kind of chastise you for, quote unquote, airing dirty laundry. How do you deal with that on a spiritual level when you are creating dangerously, having seen, other people become martyrs based on their speaking out about these things. How do you deal with that at an emotional level, knowing that your countrymen, I'm sure many of them and most of them support you, but when you heard this, that you shared in the book that you felt a little way about it, how do you process that?
Well, I think, given the history that we have, when I think of people creating dangerously, I do think of these really people who are risking their lives to write, just in a way that so many people at this moment might be risking their lives to just stay in the neighborhood where they live in Haiti right now, in some parts of the country. So when I published my book, and people would come up and they would say, why do you want to add to this sort of negativity about us? I would understand, because I grew up also, watching so much negative media about Haiti, that I certainly did not want to do that. But I think also we certainly cannot push things under the rug. I think a very big part of art is to tell some kind of truth, right? Or to attempt to tell some kind of truth. And that truth is not going to please everybody. And there's a lot of people, I think, who would rather we talk about the beach, who would rather we say, this is my Haiti, and then show something really beautiful, which there is. There's so much beauty in Haiti. I mean, that's also, I think, that's why it's important to have pieces of art that shows both that, right? That shows the complexity, so that we're not just, because everybody else is being negative, we're like, oh no, I'm just going to talk about the good things. And then, you're sort of like a tourist board, as opposed to, I think the answer is always in between. It's always in the gray. I think that's where art is produced, in that amorphous, those uncomfortable spaces. And so that doesn't quite bother me, because I understand where it's coming from, because I get just as indignant as anybody else. It's like, why did they do that? Why pick that part to show? And so I understand where it's coming from, but I also understand the burden of artists, right? It's to tell some kind of truth, and sometimes, if it's a book, it gets thrown across the room sometimes. That's part of the course. And what, I guess, even for me, I like to read something, or to see something, or to experience something that disturbs me, but that when I later on I think, at least I wasn't indifferent to this piece of art. At least, it made me question something. It lingered. So that's what I try to do.
Understood. And Liliana, we heard about some of the complexities of the story, or some of the lines in the story. Talk about some of the elements of this book or the storylines in this book that reflected, or resonated with you the most.
Sure. I mean, there were so many, but I think one of the lines, like you described in the summary of the book, some of the stories that we follow. So two are, we follow the journey up to visit Tante Iliana up in the mountains. And I think about that story a lot, because you think about those who chose to stay, and your ability to be both connected to them, and yet they're so far away, and that being a kind of emblematic of what it means to be connected to a place and also separate from a place, right? Like everybody talks about home and the mountains and how beautiful it is and how gorgeous, and yet you're separate, and then thinking about, on a sad note, just thinking about funerals, right? Like my sister-in-law just lost someone very close, and having to get on a plane and get there, and not knowing if you'll make it there in time, not knowing if you'll be able to make it to the funeral, is a theme that plays inside of the book that I think is really true for people who've had to leave and leave family behind. So that story really means a lot to me, and it's funny, it's I talk about this show to folks where I'll tell my parents, I'll tell my mom about this journey to visit Tante Liana, not knowing if you'll make it back. And just the cost of trying to get to people who are far away. And I found out, just going to put all my business out here on the on the internet, but it's true. But it inspires that. It inspires a kind of vulnerability, right? Like I found out that my grandfather, his brothers and sisters, he moved to New York, and his brothers and sisters didn't want to tell him that his father passed because they knew that he wouldn't have the resources to fly back home. And so because they didn't want to put him under the pain of knowing that he couldn't go back home, they rather, you know what I mean, not tell him at all. And then he finds out later, which is just so devastating. And I would have never known that unless I had been working on this show in which I talked about, so there's something very powerful about the personal narrative to allow other people to open up and to share, to talk about things that maybe you wouldn't have talked about because it felt too private or it felt too scary or it felt very lonely. And then you realize like there's a whole lot of people who are experiencing things in this way. And then, there's these artists, there's this chapter about artists like Basquiat, who is Puerto Rican and Haitian, like myself, So I was like, boom, boom, boom. Everybody forgets Basquiat was Haitian. We love him in America. But did you know he was Haitian, And so.
And Puerto Rican.
And Puerto Rican. So I was like, yes, mixed Caribbean. And so that felt exciting to me to share, right? Like to think about like what that means. But through that chapter, I also discovered this amazing artist, Hippolyte, who, I have hanging out. Where is he? Sorry. Where did I put him? Sorry, I'm so hyper right now. Over here, which I was like, oh my God, this artist is so incredible. And like, when you see a piece of art that like all of a sudden resonates with like, oh my God, I love plants and flowers and color and vibrancy in all of my work. And then you realize somebody had been doing this, years and years ago, and that person is connected to Basquiat. And then you start thinking about lineage and connection and the erasing of like borders in some ways, and seeing like how we're interconnected. And that was also very exciting for me to dive into in the work. Yeah.
I'm going to stay with you, Lilena. As you were, I read Yvette Harris, shout out to Yvette, who brought it together. She shared the outline of the script with me. And as I listened to this, it's a quick listen. It's 4 hours and change if you're listening on Audible. And the play itself is going to end up being how long?
Only about like an hour 30, like 90 minutes, 95 minutes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we can't cover everything in the book. We cannot cover everything. If that's the question, if you're looking to see every single chapter, not going to happen. That is why it's an adaptation. We're going to get some highlights.
As you were adapting, I saw how you took the characters that were not in first person in the book and you turned them into first person characters. So what is that process like, and how involved were you, Edwidge, in that? Was it a collaboration, or was that Liliana kind of leading and you're kind of just putting your stamp of approval on it?
Well, it was a complete surrender to Liliana. Well, not all complete, but like, yeah. I think, I do believe, I always think even without this relationship, when a reader gets a book, it's their book. Mm-hmm. And we all have a movie in our minds when we read a book, and especially with a nonfiction book where a lot of these people exist. So you can go on the internet and Google them. There'll be a picture. There's a guaranteed picture of almost everybody. I think everybody who's mentioned, except my aunt. That's their it's no longer my book, and Liliana is such a great director. I'm excited to see what she does. So I mean, I think I see myself as like a provider of the source material. That's about it. And everybody in the book also had these wonderful lives that I was able to tap into that will be interpreted in this way, public figures, most of them. Yeah.
And Liliana, from your perspective, taking this book and turning it into this theatrical work.
Yeah, I mean, this was my first time adapting a piece of literature myself, and so I was both extremely excited and terrified in the best of ways, right? Like in some ways it asks you to think in different ways. So yes, like you said, it's like placing some of the language in first person character, finding ways of rearranging thoughts and ideas into a dramatic structure, finding different ways of accessing themes to live inside a theatrical universe. I put myself in there, which is slightly like, oh God. But to Edwidge's point, like I think I appear as a character, as a way of being like, this was my encounter with this book. You know, there's a kind of directness to my way of engaging with how it breaks open into theatrical form. And I think that also manifests in different playful kind of theatrical tropes that we engage with the company. And the company is really, really amazing. And they've also given me wonderful information about how language can live in their bodies or ideas can happen in certain ways. So I say pretty early on, it isn't quite a play, it's kind of an event, because I think there's something about how theater plays with storytelling in many different ways. So we get to experience many different ways of entering into story together. And so that's been my experience. Yeah.
And I think also we come from a, you know, like even in the book, it said that a lot of the people from like your grandparents' generation or my parents or grandparents' generation, especially my parents' generation, a play to them was, you know, I mean, even during the difficult political moments, like my dad told me that people would say if something tragic had happened, they'd be like, there's going to be a play, or we should put on a play. There's something very sort of Shakespearean about that, about a play as a way of interpreting personal experience, and then taking these plays that are from the Greeks or, you know, or from Camus, and then putting them in your setting and choosing those particular plays because you want to send like a hidden message about the political situation. So that sort of, I think the maneuvering of literature, you know, for political purposes, and just also, I mean, it's embedded in the story in the sense that a play is never really a play, you know. It has such a purpose. And then also we have a very strong storytelling tradition that has sort of like these double entendres and the proverbs, these hidden morals that for me, a lot of the stories I was told when I was a child and, you know, in this creek crack storytelling, I understood like where I was told them when big events happened in my life. And I would think, oh, the story about this girl whose father died, was meant to carry me through when my father died. So I think there's that mix of like the uses of plays by the folks we talk about I talk about in the book, and then also like, I mean, I think there's sort of like this a little meta in a way. It's kind of like Liliana's putting on a play to help us talk about, like the way her grandfather might have witnessed a play in a way, you know, with. And there's always a playfulness too. There's always, you know, there's joy that was part of the pushback that we were going to live through these stories. You know, I mean, you know, Danny Laferriere, one of the stories I told in the book, he has a book called I Am a Japanese Writer, and people would always say, Danny, why are you a Japanese writer? He said, well, you know, I take on the identity of the person reading the book. And he says when he was young in Tiguave and was reading Socrates, you know, Sophocles, all these, you know, Cervantes, he's like, they became Haitian writers. Otherwise, what were they doing in my room? So, I mean, it's the way that stories can be reached for when needed. I think that's also very part of like sort of the theatrical transformation of that story, of those stories.
Yeah, and you talk about in the book not a lot of Haitians in the poorer regions of the country not being able to read, and so I imagine the oral story tradition is what kept them together and kept them going. The plays, the radio, etc. What kind of responsibility do you feel based on that knowledge, both of you as storytellers representing Haiti?
Well, I mean, let me address I'll let Liliana have to address the literacy. I mean, part of, there is a problem of, of literacy in the sense that, you know, poverty and people from certain areas, especially rural areas, not always having access to school. Like my uncle, for example, was only able to go to school till maybe he was 12, and then he had to work with his family. You know, similar for my dad, for both my parents, like they couldn't go past the exams, the expense and things like that. So oral storytelling certainly was a big part of their lives. Radio was a big way of getting information, and the visual arts. But even given this literacy rate that we have, but the amount of writers, of creators in Haiti, it's amazing. I mean, that also shows you sort of the push of creativity and difficult times, like the visual arts and the writing, the storytelling. So all storytelling more, recently through radio, through YouTube, is also a way that stories are continued to be told, even when they can't be, read.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, Liliana, the importance of the storytelling that you do as a Haitian person, as a Haitian creator.
Yeah, I mean I think there's something very powerful about representation on stage, right? Just seeing someone who looks like you, who looks like your family member, who maybe speaks like your family member, to hear a song that reminds you of your family member is a kind of testimony to your existence, to being seen. And that has always felt very powerful to me. I mean, I think theater has the same kind of questions of accessibility, of like, who feels welcome into the space? How do we get people into the space and make them feel welcome? But once they're there, how do they feel heard and seen? And I think for me as a director and a creator, the hope is to create an environment that is welcoming, that the doors are open to, that people can see themselves and feel both challenged and questioned, but also loved, and that's at the heart of it for me.
Now, Ed, this is a question for Edwidge. You tie the essays together using, I got the impression, using a very public murder of two young men from a group called Young IT?
Jeune Haiti.
Jeune Haiti. All right, I'm not even going to try. What you're saying about fake Jamaican accents. Okay. Jeune Haiti, I tried. Freedom fighters, and these, you use that incident, which I believe happened before you were even born, and you use that as kind of a center point or axis for the story as you're telling the story. Why did you choose to use them as the thread that would tie the story together?
Well, they were, Jeune Haiti, they were 13 young men who were living in the United States, and they decided they were going back to Haiti to fight against dictatorship. And two of them, the others were murdered, and in the early 1960s, and two survived, and then they were publicly executed. And for that execution, François Papadoc Duvalier had school children come, and then later a photographer friend of mine, Daniel Moel, was there when he was when he was like a teenager, and later he became a photographer. He said when I interviewed him about it, he said in part because he had been there that day and he had seen subsequently how that image was used of the murder of these young men, played on the loop, images blown up to frighten the population. Mm-hmm. And so for Daniel, that he was like, he realized the power of an image when as a young man, he saw this public assassination. And then people in my family would talk about this assassination as though they had all been there. as though they had all seen it. And it was, and for me, that proved in a certain way that they were frightened by, that it had the effect that it was intended. It had a chill. And then for me, when I heard the story, when it kept being told, and eventually saw actually a video of it that Danielle had shown me, the feeling, watching it was this, was also as a person who was outside of the country, these young men were already outside, they already had these somewhat American immigrant lives, yet decided to make this choice to go back. And so that really, for me, was a very stunning thing. Like I'd heard the story and it just stuck with me. And when I started writing, they seemed to me like a starting point, especially, then my uncle, who had a church in Bel Air and in Haiti, would tell the story of how young people, would have these study places, these book clubs, these areas. They would sometimes have plays at, in the church. And so it just was a kind of seemed to me like such a story of daring, both as people who could have made a different choice. They had already escaped, yet they went back and they died. And it felt like, one of the people who reviewed the book said something like, and I was like overdoing it, but to me it felt like they had gone back to give their lives for all of us. Right. And so, yeah, that's really why I began there. I thought that was such an amazing act of sacrifice, and both in the way that the dictatorship wanted it to be a chilling thing. It also, definitely it had a chilling effect, but it also had this very inspiring effect because people were telling that story in my family like nearly my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of this play, at the end of this book, at the end of this story, what is it that you most want people to come away with? Lillian, I'll start with you with that question.
Man, I hold on to this idea of, one, I keep saying the word love a lot, not in a sentimental way, but in a way of like that same sacrifice that you just mentioned, Edwidge, about like, what does it mean to love a people and a place so much that you would sacrifice your whole life for their freedom, and also thinking about ways in which art can linger with you. So I hope people continue thinking about Haiti. I think they think in more complicated ways. I hope they learn some things about it. I hope they discover Hippolyte and his work. I hope they look up the people that are mentioned. I hope that their understanding of a really beautiful, complicated place is expanded.
And you, Edwidge?
We're in this moment now. I mean, there's so much that's coming out of Haiti that is so agonizing for us who are Haitian and who have family in Haiti. The news is just so heart-rendering at times. Yet, I sent to Ileana when this came out, there's an article about just how people are using theater, like right now, in Haiti as a means of resistance. Still, young people, there's a festival called the Festival Quatre Chemins, which is, the art theater performed on the street to give access to people who are not going inside a space, like the theater comes to them. And so there's so much creativity. That's also for me, that would be so important to know that, yes, it's an extraordinarily difficult moment right now, but Haitians are also doing what they've always done. They're trying the best they can to live. They're also creating, they're producing, people are fighting, and part of their fight, part of their way of resisting is through art. So for me, that's what I would, it's not just going to be heavy. One rehearsal I went to, there was dancing, there was singing. There's also joy, because in writing this book, what I also realized was that part of the fight for this country, yes, it's absolute sovereignty, it's absolute, just like, let us live the dream our ancestors had for us. Let us, and it's, but it's also a fight for joy. Right. For because when you land in Haiti, the first thing you'll see is art. Mm-hmm. You'll see like paintings on the taps. You'll see like a barber shop that's just like the most elaborate like piece of like quotidian art you've ever seen. So
for the Jamaicans who don't know what the tap is, that's the bus. That's their bus public transportation.
Yeah. So I think that, like Ileana said, it's like a more complex vision of Haiti. Yeah.
Awesome. So I like that you used the word joy a while ago. Let's actually wrap it up on a happy note. Explain the joy in being a storyteller for you both, or the purpose that pushes you to continue addressing hard subjects regardless. The joy in storytelling.
Well, for me, the joy in storyteller is that the story, we have a proverb that says, "Parole gen pied, parole gen ailes." Words have wings, words have feet. So the joy in that is that the work travels on its own. Look, it went out and found Liliana. To do like her version of it. And then here we are with you. Like, how else would we have met before, So I think that's the joy, is that it brings us together. And I think that's why I'm excited when Ileana says that it'll be an event, it'll be a gathering, it'll be a ritual, because we need that right now. We need it desperately. So that's the joy in it. And just in the same way that people, like, if you've ever been to a country wake in Haiti, it's like an Irish wake. People, like, it's almost like a way of postponing the mourning until the morning. But at the wake, even with the sadness in the background, we're celebrating life.
Yeah.
And for you, Liliana?
I mean, she just said it perfectly. Life. You
You just wake up joyful, don't you?
The coffee, the cafecito. Yes. But I think, I come to the theater like to remind ourselves of like how precious life is. Life is so precious. And sometimes we take it for granted. We take it for granted until suddenly you get the phone call or something happens, And so to be able to be in a space celebrating life together with people together, that is sacred to me. That is special. That is a celebration of like that one thing that we all share, which is like the blessing of being alive on the earth. And that I like to celebrate in the theater. And I feel grateful to be able to do.
Awesome. I'm excited to see it. It's coming up on May 4th to May 28th. Any last thoughts to share before audience, I'm saying this one last time. If you have any questions, put them in the comments right now, because we're wrapping it up. So ladies, any last thoughts to share before we go?
I want folks to come out and support certainly this show, but also support like our creators, and especially in South Florida. We're living in this moment right now. There's so much you can't say, you can't teach, books are being banned. So that's how you can, that's another way of showing your support, of like showing up for the things that get through, right? And then when you support, like, again, this show, yes, but also other shows. I think there's Cry Freedom, there's a show in Fort Lauderdale, like, support those shows. Because when they look out and like there's none of us, it may not happen again for a while. So especially in a place where so much is being shut down, so much is being banned, show up, please. I know it's asking a lot, but for this show and for all the other things that we're doing against all odds here, especially in this book banning, we can't talk Black history environment, that's another way of you showing your support, also resisting against this environment we're in right now in South Florida.
Yeah.
And Lillian, any last thoughts you want to share?
Same. You'll be happy that you showed up. Hey, you'll be happy. You'll be like, oh, I should have showed up for more. It's also Haitian Heritage Month, I hear, in Miami. So there's so many events that are happening, and hopefully that leads to more exploration that I think will, again, further life.
Yes, there's a Little Haiti book fair. There's going to be quite a lot of wonderful Haitian events, but do come see us though at the Miami Colony Theater.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm gonna pop this comment on Andreen Bonner writes. She says, this conversation brings joy. Yes, Dr. Renee Shea is your biggest supporter of your books for schools. How are you responding to the ban? Okay, so we did get a question.
Oh, the ban is heartbreaking because the ban is really targeting a particular population, kids who are in public schools. If people who are in private schools are going to be able to read whatever they want. So it's contributing to more inequality, and it's making teachers fearful. My daughter's teacher, she's a senior now, her teacher was like, telling the juniors, like, she's not sure she can, teach anymore because the kids can report you if, it's a whole sort of making, like, policing what kids are reading. It's just, it's mean, first of all, and it's disingenuous. It's kind of like, aren't these the freedom people? They just want some people to be free. Right. It's really crazy. But I don't think we can sleep on it because I see these things are like incremental. You can't say gay. You can't read James Baldwin. You can't. It's incremental. And anybody who's lived under a dictatorship sort of recognizes the increment. I think we all have to stay awake.
Yeah.
Liliana, you look like you had a thought on that too.
No, I just 100% agree. You don't ban something unless you think it's dangerous, right? And ideas and the information is powerful. And so think about what they're preventing you from having access to, or preventing kids from having access to. And so fighting for that, staying awake and alive and paying attention to that is deeply, deeply critical. Yeah.
All right, so to all of our viewers, thank you so much for engaging. On behalf of Island Space Caribbean Museum, I am also going to plug our May activities. We have a women's event happening on May 7th, and on Mother's Day, we have a one-woman show by not by Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm is gone. It's a one-woman show on Shirley Chisholm's life by Ingrid Griffith that we are hosting at the Pompano Beach Cultural Center. You can watch that as well, but for the rest of the month, I encourage you to go down to the Colony Theater where you can watch and enjoy not living dangerously Jamaican, but Jamaican creating dangerous. We have a song called Living Dangerously, right? Right. So again, we invite you to visit Miami New Drama. Let me put that on the screen if you haven't seen it enough so far. MiamiNewDrama.org to learn more about the show times, where, when, how you can enjoy this production during Haitian Heritage Month at the Colony Theater, which is on Lincoln Road in Miami. The play is on stage from May 4th to May 28th. On behalf of Island Origins and Jamaicans.com, I'm Calibe Thompson. This has been Island Origins live on Jamaicans.com with Edwidge Danticat and Lilena Blain-Cruz. Thank you all. If you've been watching and you enjoy the show, please like and share. Tell a friend to watch, tell a friend to go.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Have a
Thank
good night.
you. Have a good
Bye-bye,
night.
everybody.
Bye.